Something very unusual just happened in the WNBA, and most sports media completely missed it. While everyone was busy debating Caitlin Clark's shooting percentages and box scores, Clark quietly revealed multiple massive truths about what's really happening behind the scenes with the Indiana Fever. And once you connect all the dots together, the picture becomes a lot bigger than a simple early season slump. Over the last few days, Clark openly discussed officiating frustration, admitted to battling a mental hurdle, accepted accountability for a technical foul, and even hinted at a major offensive system change happening inside the organization. These weren't random comments. They felt like puzzle pieces revealing the real state of the Fever right now. What makes this so fascinating is how rare this level of honesty is from a superstar athlete. Most players hide struggles behind safe media answers. Clark did the opposite. She pulled the curtain back just enough for fans to finally understand why this team still looks unfinished despite all the hype surrounding them. And honestly, some of these revelations could completely change how people view Indiana moving forward. At first glance, Caitlin Clark's technical foul against the Los Angeles Sparks looked like a completely normal emotional outburst during a heated game. Competitive superstar gets frustrated. Referee blows the whistle. Media overreacts for 24 hours. That's usually how these stories go. But what happened after the game may have revealed something much more important about the Indiana Fever internally. During the post-game press conference, reporters immediately brought up the technical foul, clearly expecting controversy. You could almost feel the media waiting for Clark to criticize officiating or complain about the call publicly. Instead, something surprising happened. Before Clark could fully answer, Stephanie White jumped in and tried to protect her star player immediately. White basically attempted to absorb the situation before it became a bigger media storyline. But then Clark interrupted. Instead of letting her coach defend her, Clark calmly admitted she deserved the technical foul. No excuses, no blaming referees, no emotional rant, just instant accountability in front of everyone. It was a small moment, but fans online noticed it immediately because it felt different from the typical athlete-media interaction people are used to seeing. And honestly, that exchange may have revealed more about the Fever's chemistry than any box score could. For months, people have pushed narratives suggesting tension inside the organization, rumors about coaching frustrations, speculation about Clark's role, questions about whether the Fever truly understand how to build around her. But in that moment, the dynamic between Clark and Stephanie White looked incredibly genuine. White instinctively tried to shield her player. Clark refused the protection and owned the mistake herself. Then both laughed the situation off naturally. That's not fake public relations training, that's trust. It also showed another major evolution in Clark's leadership. During her college years, people often focused only on her scoring and flashy passing. But now fans are starting to see something else emerge: emotional maturity under enormous pressure. Clark understands every reaction she has becomes national conversation instantly. Yet instead of avoiding accountability, she stepped directly into it. And what happened next made the situation even more interesting. Because only days earlier, Clark had already started hinting at another frustration she had stayed quiet about for most of her professional career: officiating. One of the biggest differences fans are noticing this season is that Caitlin Clark no longer seems willing to stay completely silent about the physical treatment she receives on the court. And honestly, a lot of longtime viewers believe this change was inevitable. During her rookie season, Clark absorbed an unbelievable amount of contact: hard screens, aggressive traps, physical bumps driving to the rim. There were countless moments where fans felt she wasn't getting the same whistle as other stars around the league. But publicly, Clark almost never addressed it. She kept her answers diplomatic and avoided creating headlines about referees. That's why her recent comments stood out so much. After Indiana's loss to Dallas, Clark casually mentioned that she probably could have gotten a few more foul calls attacking the basket. On the surface, it sounded harmless, but many fans viewed it as a major shift in tone. Because for the first time, Clark openly acknowledged something supporters had been complaining about for months. And then Stephanie White added even more fuel to the conversation. White discussed off-season conversations around freedom of movement and hinted that officiating consistency still needs adjustment across the league. Again, nothing overly dramatic was said. But when you combine White's comments with Clark's growing willingness to speak up, it becomes clear that Indiana may be quietly sending a message without directly starting controversy. What's fascinating is how carefully Clark handles it. She never sounds bitter or emotional discussing officiating. Instead, she frames everything calmly and professionally, which actually makes the comments feel more powerful. Fans interpret it as confidence. They see a player who now understands her value to the league and no longer feels obligated to quietly absorb every hit without acknowledgement. Some analysts believe Clark's increased aggressiveness attacking the rim is also part of this evolution. Instead of settling for difficult perimeter shots constantly, she's forcing defenders into contact situations more often. And when those whistles don't come, fans immediately explode online. Of course, there's another side to this conversation too. Critics argue Clark still needs to adjust fully to the physicality of professional basketball and that every superstar faces tough defense early in their career. But regardless of where people stand, one thing is obvious: Clark's voice is getting stronger. And according to many fans, the timing of all this isn't random. Because behind the scenes, Stephanie White may already be rebuilding Indiana's entire offensive identity around a completely new philosophy. Buried inside one of Stephanie White's recent press conferences was a basketball detail that casual fans probably missed completely, but hardcore viewers immediately realized how important it was. White explained that the Fever want Caitlin Clark playing inline to inline instead of top of the key to top of the key. To most people, that probably sounded like meaningless coach terminology. In reality, it may reveal the biggest offensive adjustment Indiana has made since drafting Clark. What White was really describing is movement. Last season, one of the biggest criticisms surrounding Indiana's offense was how stationary it became. Clark would bring the ball up the floor, stop near the top of the arc, and spend entire possessions trying to create something against a set defense. Defenders loaded up against her constantly because they knew exactly where she would initiate offense from. Fans became frustrated watching possessions slow down into isolation basketball instead of the fast-paced chaos Clark thrived in at Iowa. Now it sounds like Indiana is actively trying to change that. Instead of keeping Clark planted 30 feet from the basket, White wants her moving continuously through the offense, cutting across the lane, flying off screens, receiving the ball while already attacking downhill instead of standing still waiting for plays to develop. It's a massive philosophical difference because movement creates confusion defensively. Defenders can't relax when players constantly shift positions and attack from multiple angles. And honestly, many fans have been begging for this exact adjustment since opening night. The Fever look dramatically more dangerous whenever Clark operates in motion. The offense suddenly speeds up, passing lanes open, transition opportunities appear faster, defenders become uncomfortable. Even Clark's energy seems different when she's attacking dynamically rather than dribbling against static coverage for entire possessions. What makes this strategy even more interesting is how directly it addresses fan criticism after Indiana's sluggish performances early in the season. Analysts pointed out that the offense often looked disconnected and predictable, especially in half-court sets. There were stretches with almost no off-ball movement at all. Players stood watching instead of cutting aggressively or forcing defensive rotations. White's comments now suggest the coaching staff fully recognizes that problem. Of course, implementing a motion-heavy offense takes time. Timing, chemistry, and spacing all have to develop naturally. But if Indiana successfully unlocks this system, it could completely change the ceiling of the team. Because once Clark starts receiving the ball with momentum instead of from a dead stop, the entire defense changes instantly. Even with the new offensive adjustments being discussed, there's one issue Indiana still hasn't fully solved yet: chemistry. And after the Fever's early season performances, fans online became brutally honest about it. The biggest criticism centered around how disconnected the offense looked during long stretches of games. Against Dallas especially, viewers noticed possessions where almost nobody moved without the basketball. Clark would initiate offense near the perimeter, Kelsey Mitchell would isolate on one side, Aaliyah Boston would remain near the paint, and the spacing often looked completely stagnant. Instead of forcing defenses into difficult rotations, Indiana sometimes made defending feel simple. That's what frustrated fans the most. On paper, this roster should be explosive offensively. Clark's passing gravity alone should create constant movement opportunities for teammates. Defenders naturally collapse toward her because they fear the deep three and transition attack. In theory, that attention should generate easy cuts, open shooters, and flowing ball movement everywhere else on the floor. But early in the season, that rhythm hasn't consistently appeared yet. Some analysts pointed directly to assist numbers to highlight the issue. During one stretch against Dallas, Indiana fell significantly behind in team assists, which many viewed as evidence that the offense had become too individualized. Fans immediately started debating whether players were trying too hard to create their own shots instead of trusting the system collectively. Kelsey Mitchell became a huge discussion point during these debates. While most people acknowledge her scoring talent, critics argued that the offense occasionally slows down whenever possessions become isolation-heavy. Others defended Mitchell, saying she's often forced into difficult shot creation situations because the offense breaks down too early in possessions. The disagreement quickly turned into one of the hottest conversations surrounding the team. Meanwhile, fans also expected much smoother chemistry between Clark and Aaliyah Boston by now. There have been flashes of brilliance between them, especially in transition and pick-and-roll situations, but supporters believed this duo would already look unstoppable together consistently. Instead, there are still moments where both players seem slightly out of sync offensively. To be fair, building chemistry under this much pressure is incredibly difficult. Every Fever game now feels nationally analyzed possession by possession. Every mistake becomes social media content within seconds. That environment naturally speeds up frustration from fans expecting instant domination. Still, many supporters believe the chemistry issues are fixable if Indiana fully commits to movement, pace, and trust within the offense. But while fans continue debating offensive flow, another conversation has completely taken over social media lately: Caitlin Clark's shooting slump. The moment Caitlin Clark started missing threes consistently, the internet completely lost its mind. For most players, a rough two-game shooting stretch wouldn't even become a headline. But Clark isn't treated like most players. Every performance gets dissected nationally. Every missed shot becomes debate show material. And after opening the season shooting far below her normal standard from deep, social media instantly exploded with panic, criticism, and non-stop speculation. Some fans called it exhaustion. Others blamed the offensive system. A few critics even questioned whether defenses had finally figured her out. But when you actually look deeper into the situation, the story becomes far more complicated than simple percentages. A huge number of Clark's early misses came under difficult circumstances: late shot clock possessions, contested pull-ups, forced attempts after stagnant offensive sets completely broke down. There were multiple possessions where she received the ball with almost no time remaining and had to create something against loaded defenses. Those are incredibly low-efficiency situations for any player, even elite shooters. And despite the misses, many analysts noticed something important: her mechanics still looked clean. Clark spent the offseason working extensively on her shot preparation and mechanics, reportedly alongside renowned trainer Brandon Payne. The release itself doesn't appear broken. The form still looks smooth. The issue seems more connected to rhythm and timing than some catastrophic shooting collapse. That's a massive difference many reactionary headlines ignored completely. Fans also pointed out how different Clark's role looks offensively compared to Iowa. In college, she often operated in freer, faster-paced environments where transition opportunities created easier rhythm threes naturally. In Indiana's slower half-court stretches, many of her shots currently come against set defenses with heavy physical pressure. Still, numbers matter in professional sports, and Clark knows that better than anyone. That's why her recent comments about not letting missed shots affect her mentally stood out so much. Instead of sounding panicked, she emphasized focusing on playmaking and attacking the paint rather than obsessing over outside shooting percentages. That calmness actually surprised a lot of people. Because while fans online were spiraling emotionally over every missed three, Clark sounded remarkably composed discussing the slump publicly. She acknowledged the struggles without sounding defeated. And then she said something that may have been the most revealing comment of her entire professional career so far. Because according to Clark herself, the real battle right now may not be physical at all. It may be mental. When Caitlin Clark admitted she was still fighting a mental hurdle, the entire tone surrounding her shooting slump suddenly changed. Because athletes almost never speak this openly. Most stars are trained to protect their image at all costs. When they struggle, they usually give vague answers about getting more reps in the gym or trusting the process. They rarely admit vulnerability publicly, especially this early in a season. But Clark approached the situation completely differently. She calmly explained that physically she feels healthy, yet mentally there are still moments where rebuilding trust in her body remains difficult. That single statement revealed far more than any statistic ever could. Over the last 14 months, Clark has lived under non-stop pressure, deep tournament runs, national media obsession, physical defensive attention every single night, hard fouls, injury scares, constant scrutiny from both supporters and critics. Fans sometimes forget how exhausting that level of attention becomes when there's almost no time to mentally reset between seasons. And according to some analysts, that accumulated pressure may finally be showing itself. Clark specifically mentioned there are still days where soreness appears, even though medically she believes her body is okay overall. That's an important distinction. She wasn't claiming to be injured. She was describing the process of mentally trusting movement again after months of physical punishment and non-stop basketball intensity. Honestly, many fans respected the transparency immediately. Instead of pretending everything was perfect, Clark gave an answer that sounded human. She didn't ask for sympathy. She didn't make excuses for poor shooting nights. She simply acknowledged that confidence and rhythm sometimes take time to fully return after difficult stretches physically and emotionally. And ironically, that honesty may actually make her even more dangerous long-term. Because elite athletes who recognize mental struggles early are often better equipped to overcome them. Clark already understands the mechanics remain there. The playmaking remains elite. The explosiveness attacking downhill still flashes constantly. That means the foundation hasn't disappeared. The challenge now is reconnecting all of it consistently under pressure. Some fans even believe these struggles could ultimately strengthen her leadership. Younger players around the league rarely see superstars discuss mental battles this openly. Clark doing it publicly without embarrassment may actually shift how athletes handle these conversations moving forward. But here's the part many people are missing completely. Even during what everyone calls a slump, Clark is still producing elite numbers. And that may be the scariest part for the rest of the league. That's what makes this entire situation so fascinating. Despite all the criticism, despite the shooting slump, despite the chemistry concerns, and despite the mental hurdle conversations, Caitlin Clark is still putting up superstar-level production. And honestly, that should terrify the rest of the league. Most players experiencing this much pressure at the same time would completely collapse statistically. Clark hasn't. Even while fans debate her shooting percentages non-stop, she continues generating offense at an elite level through passing, pace, and overall floor control. The scoring remains strong. The assists remain strong. And perhaps most importantly, defenses still completely panic whenever she touches the basketball. That's why many analysts believe the Fever's current struggles are actually more encouraging than people realize. Indiana clearly hasn't reached its offensive ceiling yet. The chemistry is still developing. The new movement-heavy system is still being implemented. Clark herself openly admits she's still rebuilding rhythm mentally. Yet even with all those issues happening simultaneously, the Fever remain competitive, and Clark continues producing numbers most guards in the league would dream about. That's an incredibly important detail people keep overlooking. Fans are reacting emotionally because expectations became unrealistically massive after Clark entered the league. People expected instant domination every single night. They expected the Fever to immediately transform into a flawless offensive machine. But basketball rarely develops that cleanly, especially when a franchise undergoes this much attention and pressure all at once. In many ways, Indiana is still learning what version of itself it wants to become. And the most interesting part may be watching Clark evolve beyond simply being a scorer. During difficult shooting nights, she's still impacting games through leadership and playmaking. She's learning how to control tempo, how to manipulate defenses without relying entirely on deep threes, how to stay composed when everything around her becomes chaotic. Those are superstar growth moments. Some fans online are treating every rough stretch like a catastrophe, but others believe these struggles may actually accelerate Clark's long-term development. Adversity forces elite players to expand their game mentally, emotionally, and strategically. And judging by how openly Clark is handling these challenges publicly, many believe she's already growing through the pressure rather than shrinking from it. Which brings us back to the bigger picture. The mainstream headlines keep missing entirely. This story was never just about missed shots. It's about transformation. A young superstar adjusting to pressure, leadership, physical recovery, and a completely new offensive identity all at the same time. And if Indiana finally puts all the pieces together, the version of Caitlin Clark waiting on the other side of this process could be even scarier than the one fans saw at Iowa. Right now, most sports coverage surrounding Caitlin Clark is stuck on the surface. People argue about shooting percentages. They debate technical fouls. They obsess over box scores and viral clips. But the deeper story unfolding inside the Indiana Fever organization is far more interesting than any single stat line. Over the last few days, Clark quietly revealed something most superstar athletes rarely show publicly: evolution in real time. She admitted accountability after losing her composure emotionally. She openly acknowledged frustration with officiating instead of pretending everything was perfect. She discussed rebuilding trust mentally after months of physical punishment and non-stop pressure. And at the same time, Stephanie White revealed that Indiana is actively redesigning the offense to unlock a completely different version of Clark moving forward. That's not collapse, that's transition. And transitions are messy. Fans sometimes expect greatness to happen instantly, especially after the insane hype surrounding Clark's arrival in the WNBA. But historically, the biggest superstars usually experience a difficult adjustment period before everything finally clicks together. The pressure becomes overwhelming. Defenses adapt. Expectations skyrocket beyond reality. Then eventually, elite players evolve and come back even stronger. Many people now believe Clark is somewhere in the middle of that process. What's scary is that even during this supposed slump, she still looks like one of the most impactful players in the league. The playmaking hasn't disappeared. The court vision remains elite. Defenses still bend completely around her presence. And if the new motion-based offense truly starts creating easier rhythm opportunities for her offensively, the entire league could have a massive problem very soon. That's why the next few weeks feel so important. Fans are watching closely to see whether Indiana's chemistry improves, whether Clark's shooting rhythm fully returns, whether Stephanie White's new offensive philosophy actually unlocks the fast, flowing style supporters have been begging for since opening night. Because if all those pieces finally connect at the same time, this early season turbulence may eventually look like nothing more than the growing pains of a future dynasty learning how to function under historic pressure. And honestly, that possibility may be exactly why the rest of the league should still be very nervous right now.